Hello, 10th graders. Today's lecture, I want to start off with a couple things. One, sorry if you hear some wind noise. It is very windy outside. Every once in a while you hear a big woo. Sorry about that. Second, there's going to be a slight change to the lecture. What I want to do is help you guys, one, let you guys process chunks of the notes so you don't lose it all as you're taking it. And two, really make sure you guys are taking notes that have enough information to match the need of what I want you to get out of this lecture. So what you're going to see is that I'm going to pause 4 times. I'm just going to say pause here, answer question 1, or pause here, answer question 2. You should pause the lecture and then go over to the next section or scroll down your sheet and answer the question based on what we just talked about. So once again, when I tell you to pause, you're going to pause, make sure your notes are completely updated from this section, answer the question, and then restart the video and keep going. So today's lecture, we're going to be wrapping up kind of Spain's rule in the New World, or Latin America. The point being is that we're going to start moving over to other Europeans and their effects either in the Americas or around the world in Asia. We're going to wrap a nice bow on this with one big idea. That is mercantilism, and its 2 main uses, or where we see it used the most, which is the use of silver and raw resources. Cool. So for context, we have 2 big pieces of context we're going to dive into. First is China. We're going to talk more about Europeans trading the Indian Ocean trade in the upcoming week. But for the biggest piece of context we need is that during the 1500s, there's the Ming Dynasty. Now, we talked about the Ming Dynasty. One of the biggest things the Ming Dynasty does is that it tries paper currency. For one of the first places to ever try paper currency. It does not work. It inflates, ruins the economy. We don't really need to get into the details of why or the big reasons why. If you want to, you can message or text me or ask me. I'd love to explain it to you more. But what this leads to is Ming deciding that to use a currency that all its people are going to use to pay taxes. The Ming just want to make taxes easier. And they also want to make taxes be paid in something that is useful and can be used a lot of. They decided to be silver. So the Ming want all their taxes in silver. This means the Ming Empire needs a lot of silver brought into China. There is no silver deposits. That means that anyone who wants to trade with China needs to now trade in silver. As we know, the Europeans really want to trade with China. We also know that the Europeans have no items that the Chinese really want. Remember, the Chinese view themselves as the Middle Kingdom. They're one of the strongest empires in the world. And if that's the case, if the Europeans want some of these Chinese goods, they need to trade in silver. This is called the single whip system, where the Chinese decide that they only want their taxes paid in silver. That means all of their people need to now pay tax in silver, which drives this huge demand worldwide for it. Cool. Our other piece of context is reminding yourselves about Latin America. The New World, the Americas, colonized by Spain, then followed up and colonized by many other countries as well, such as England, France, Portugal, and others. With that in mind, Spain is the first one. They create this area known as Latin America, areas that have been influenced by Spain. With that, we know that Spain's main goal, they have 2, create wealth and to spread Catholicism, the version of Christianity that they follow. Mika. Go chew that bone elsewhere, ma'am. With that in mind, they thus need to have they need ways to create wealth. So that's why we have silver and raw resources at the top. Spain and any country that ends up colonizing parts of the Americas, they're going to create wealth through either silver or through raw resources. Cool. Finally, we're going to remind ourselves real fast of our definition of mercantilism. Mercantilism is an economic system, one of the first major written down and followed economic systems, primarily followed by European countries. France, Spain, England being 3 of the most important ones, but it's a theory that generally exists within most European countries. The idea is that the government is going to heavily involve itself in trade. The idea is that the government's going to heavily influence and decide how trade is going to work. The main idea being is that as a country, you have to sell more than you buy. This is called exporting more than you import. We're going to put this all together at the end of the lecture once we see how silver and raw resources are used. So just keep that broad definition in mind. Cool. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to ask my first question. So pause this video, scroll down and answer that question. Cool. So now we're going to move on to silver. Silver, why is it so important? Now, as humans have traded forever. We have what now we know as currency. Our currency, which is this money, is The dollar. Now, you ask yourself, when you look at this, you say this is worth $1. It has meaning to us. It's because we've all agreed that this has some sort of value. Now, for most of human history, there was nothing paper-wise that people would accept as value. You needed something like what we call hard currency, or something you could tie value to. And humans have generally tied value to gold, silver, bronze, and other materials that come from the ground as a general way of saying, okay, we can all agree this has value. Another version of trade has always just been bartering, or just trading goods with other goods. So, silver becomes basically the world's first universal currency. There's enough of it that it has extreme value, but it's not like gold where it's very rare. So it's easier for people to mint or create silver coins than actually use to pay them. So, silver becomes our first universal world currency that you can use almost anywhere. Now, its discovery. The Spanish, when they first colonized the Americas, actually don't get much money out of it. When they first colonized the Americas, it's seen more as a religious mission. They're trying to convert people and taking over this land. It's a place they can see as sending people off to gain wealth. And actually, their first goal through wealth-wise was to find gold. That doesn't work. What they do is that they discover one of the biggest silver mines ever. It's still mined for silver today, called Potosi. There's other smaller silver mines throughout Latin America, but Potosi is the main one. And what happens is that as the Spanish bring in more natives and they bring in slave labor, they find that this silver mine is huge. There's a bunch of potential out of it. And then basically by the late 1500s, Spain becomes the largest exporter or producer of silver, basically mining about 70 to 80% of the world's silver. Now, this makes Spain hypothetically very wealthy. This silver is used in a couple ways. Number one, Spain is going to bring silver back to Spain, keep it in their vaults. It is their country's wealth. It's heavily used, though, in trade. It's used in a few ways. One, Spanish merchants are going to bring silver and sail over to Asia. That silver is going to be used to trade with China to get Chinese goods. Those Chinese goods are going to be brought back to Europe and sold throughout Europe. Spain's also going to sell its silver to other European countries. Remember, many European countries want to trade with China. So they're willing to buy Spain's silver and then go use it to sell with China. There is a whole trade system based around getting silver from Spain and also from Japan. Japan is the other major silver creating country that they then use to buy things from China. Remember, China is the one who wants silver for its goods to pay its taxes. So that's how you're going to get Chinese goods. This is great for Spain, and they make a lot of money off of it. It's great for China. They are able to have a very efficient tax system because of it. And every other country benefits because they're getting Chinese goods. They can then sell back in Europe. Europeans really want these Chinese luxury goods. What's the economic effect of silver? So we're going to look at two areas. First, European effects and Chinese effects. In Europe, we're going to break it down European effects into two parts. Broad European effects first. So overall, this is going to create a lot of wealth in Europe. As merchants bring back Chinese luxury goods, they sell those luxury goods throughout Europe. So one, merchants are going to greatly increase their wealth from this trade. We're going to dive more into that as the week comes on. But merchants create more wealth and they get wealthier. Two, European nobility and the middle class start to get more and more luxury goods. And as these goods become more traded, they become cheaper. So for example, tea, we talked about in class, went from a high luxury good. Then throughout the 1600s, as more and more tea is brought, it becomes cheaper, becomes a middle class, and even a lower class good as well. So these goods become less luxury and more just goods everyone want. Our second European effect is Spain. Spain, you think, is going to become this dominant European power. Early on in the 1500s, they are. They own basically the most land in Europe in the early 1500s, before the silver trade really even starts making them wealth. The problem with Spain is that, we talked about this before, their government isn't focused on improving the Spanish infrastructure, economy, and support systems to make it an effective empire. Instead, the government cares less and less and less about effectively running their administration. The king cares less about doing that. The people in charge of the government care more about making money for themselves. They become corrupt and care more about making money for themselves than helping the common people. And this makes the Spanish government really poorly well run. They overtax their people, and their empire starts to fall apart. In fact, what happens is that the Spanish government isn't effective at taxing the colonies. If you were in the 1500s a person who lived in the colonies of Spain, you didn't actually face Spanish rule very much. The Spanish had a tax on silver that was basically ignored, and they never actually effectively followed through on it. So Spain's not making much money from their colonies. They don't really have a strong governmental system in the colonies to make tax wealth off of it. Instead, their empire, as it's growing larger, is already starting to fall apart because of poor governance. Silver in China is also going to have an overall negative effect. Since the Chinese base their whole system on silver, the Chinese government wants to collect silver. And they don't do a good job of spreading silver out throughout society. What happens is that to pay your silver, you had two options as a peasant. One, you work in a job that you can sell items to get silver, or you have to buy and get silver from someone who does have it. And so that makes it so it changes the economy of China. There are only a few things that actually get you silver if you sell silk, porcelain, or other fine goods. This makes it so people, Chinese peasants, start only working in industries where they can make silver to pay their taxes. This makes Chinese peasants less likely to be farmers. This is going to lead to two issues. One, as more and more people keep silver and don't share it around, it's going to make silver too expensive for the average Chinese person to get. It's going to make it too expensive. Two, Chinese peasants are going to stop working in basic industries that support the economy, such as farming. This is going to lead to many droughts. People are not able to pay off their taxes, which leads to rebellions. And overall, this is going to weaken the Ming government. The issues with silver and silver inflation is actually going to be a major reason why the Ming Empire falls and the Qing take over. Cool. I'm going to pause once again here. You're going to answer a question, and they're going to move on to the second half of the lecture.
Can't fear shit, built to the top like a pyramid, my lineage lit and it's serious, bring the beat life like Jorno, young gang star flip the kill switch, Jojo, pose, 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 Jojo, pose, 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 Jojo, pose, 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 Jojo.
No Mika, I gotta finish. I'm sorry. Don't look at me like that. We just played for a long time. Get on to the second half of our lecture, starting out with cash crops. Cash crops was the other main way empires and countries made money off their colonies. There are three specific cash crops that we see grown in the Americas: cotton, tobacco, and sugar. Those three basically make up the greatest way to create wealth. Now, you had to do that in certain ways. The whole point or way that cash crops make you money is growing a lot of them. These are not crops that you would normally grow for survival. These are crops you're purely making money off of because you use them to make other things. Cotton you make into textiles or clothes that you sell later. Tobacco into cigarettes and cigars. Sugar Europeans found you could put in almost any single dish to make better. So all of these things are used to improve European life. Europeans are going to take these cash crops, also known as raw materials, and create goods out of them that they can then sell for more money. So cash crops make them money initially because they'll then turn them into finished goods that make even more money. We also know these cash crops are grown using plantation-style agriculture. That's when you have huge farms that take up a lot of land, usually use forced labor such as slavery, that you then make a lot of money because your labor costs are very low, and you make a lot of money off growing these goods. So these cash crops are what drive the slave trade, which actually leads us to our triangle trade. The triangle trade is basically how the slave trade happens. It creates a triangle that connects the Americas to Europe to Africa back to the Americas. The trade's pretty simple. European merchants will start going down to Africa. They bring a few specific items. They bring guns and finished materials, such as textiles, rum, goods that African nobility want. African nobility will then sell slaves to those merchants. Merchants will then take slaves down to the Americas to sell because the colonies need slave labor. They will then load up their ships of cash crops and other unfinished goods like fur pelts and other things found in the colonies that are then taken to Europe to then be made into manufactured goods, and the cycle starts anew. This is how European countries make money. By taxing these merchants are the ones who bring these goods. The European countries also then tax the goods sold within their own countries and tax the trade. They also have some of their own government-run merchants who also make money off this. This then, I'm going to pause here. You can now, I almost forgot. I'm now going to pause here so you can go ahead and answer that question and get your notes together. Cool, our last part is putting this all together in the mercantilist system. How it works. First, our mercantilist system is based in European countries. Remember, as I said earlier, they want to control trade. They're going to make money off controlling it. Their main goal as a European country is to sell more goods than you buy. You export more than you import. I'm going to use Spain as our example here, and as I explain the mercantilist system, use Spain as an example. So Spain, especially in the 1600s, needs to make more money off the colonies. They're going to do that by vastly increasing the rules around trade and then adding a lot more ships and government officials who are going to make sure that happens. So what are some of the laws they make? So if we understand the whole basis of this system is that the mother country or the original European country who founded these colonies is making money off this system. So they're going to pass a few laws. First, colonies are only allowed to trade with their mother countries. Let's use Spain as an example. All the Latin American colonies are only allowed to either trade with other Spanish-controlled colonies or they have to trade with Spain. That means all the cash crops they grow, all the silver they mine, either goes directly to trade partners in China that they're using or goes to Spain. Now, here's why this might upset a colony. A colony might potentially get better value or make more money by selling it to England or to France or to other colonies. Instead, they're forced to sell it to Spain. So that upsets the colony, but it helps Spain. Spain then takes all these raw resources from their colonies, and they're also going to take that silver, and they're going to do two things with it. They can either trade it with other countries, such as Spain trading its silver with China to get luxury goods, or they'll take those finished goods and manufacture finished products. As we talked about, cotton into textiles is a really good example, or tobacco into cigarettes and cigars. They're then going to take those finished goods, turn it around, and sell it back to their colonies. Since every country is trying this mercantilist policy, as let's say I'm Spain, it's really hard for me to sell goods to France. France is going to have tariffs or taxes that make my goods very expensive to French people. So French people are going to buy French goods. As Spain, how do I make money? I'm going to sell my goods back to my colonies. Once again, this benefits Spain as the mother country, but if I'm a colonist in Latin America, I just sold raw resources to Spain, and I have to buy more expensive finished goods that my goods then made. European countries are also going to pass laws around making goods. So if you're a colonist, you're actually not allowed to make certain goods. That's because they want you to only buy goods from the mother country. So once again, this mercantilist system is all about controlling trade, making sure your colonies only trade with you, and that you're selling more goods than you're buying. It's called the zero-sum game. This is going to lead to pretty heavy competition over trade routes specifically. If I'm Spain, I want to make sure England and France or the Netherlands cannot trade in my colonies and do not trade in the same trade routes I use. So there's constant wars actually fighting over who can trade with who controls what trade resource or what trade route. Not only that, there's also fighting over pirating. Spain, England, France are all going to pay pirates to attack each other's trade to try to weaken each other. So this competition is only going to increase between European countries as they try to make more and more money off trade with their colonies and trade with other people. Cool, so this mercantilist system is going to push a lot of the economic activity that happens in period 4. So I want to make sure we truly understand this system. I'm going to pause again right here. You're going to answer a question, and then our lecture is over. You have one more activity. You have a document practice. What you're going to do right now, I have written instructions, but you're now going to go and watch me break documents to give you an example, and then you're going to try breaking down another document on your own to finish off your exit ticket. If you have any questions, please reach out. Have a good day.